Greg is absent. Pete, I think you can vote today. Okay. Let's see. Public comments on agenda items.
Public?
Public comments?
Somebody's calling in a comment.
Approval of minutes of the August 28th meeting.
I got one change.
Oh, Woody?
Last page, one. Mm-hmm. I guess I was considered, I guess it's, I can't remember if it was here or not. Was I a regular member there or still an alternate?
You were appointed to serve, so I guess you're functioning as a regular member.
But I think you're right. I think it should say alternate.
Alternate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Were there any other changes, corrections, additions to minutes?
Make a motion to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved as corrected. Okay. Moving on to cargo elevators. Agenda item number 5. We first discussed the cargo elevators in July, in our July 24th meeting. The task force dated July 18th, 2018. If you guys recall, at the July meeting, platform versus cargo, where people are putting them now. We wanted more information and history of the requests to the Board of Adjustment, such as the number of cases, the circumstances, how many were issued. Tim offered to gather that information and bring it back as a PowerPoint, and due to numerous issues, the request has been hanging. So we're here to talk about that.
Do you want to go ahead? Do you want to go ahead, or do you?
No, go ahead. Go
Okay.
right.
The one of the reasons we put it off and didn't go any further with it was when we adopted the new floodplain ordinance. It put some guidelines in there that I'm not sure how they're going to interact with the other stuff. But before we went to the cargo lifts, and I'll give you an example. I actually bought it with me today. That actual section of the ordinance, we have a couple sections in here that's going to need to be cleaned up. And one of them was elevators and cargo lifts. The way the information got put in here, it left out some exceptions that would apply to us. One of which would, if we don't clean it up in this ordinance first, you won't be able to have any cargo lifts unless you build a hardened structure, which really it's invisible. It's going to make it economically, difficult. So I really wanted to bring that fact to you before we brought you anything on the cargo lifts. The other portion of it was that staff. I wanted to make you aware that although this was brought from the Board of Adjustments to the Board of Commissioners, and then it was basically sent down to the Planning Board, staff's, other than this ordinance being cleaned up, staff doesn't see a problem with the cargo lifts. There hasn't been a great many issues with cargo lifts as far as what they can do and where you can put them and where you can't put them, and if they're a problem based on the number compared to what's been to the Board of Adjustments. And the ones that have went to the Board of Adjustments, they've made really good decisions on. The Board of Adjustments is there, so you don't have to change your ordinance every time you need to look at the rule to see if it applies or if it's become a hardship. So if you start saying we've had 4 things go to the Board of Adjustments in a 4-year period, and we need to look at redoing the ordinance, then you're really undoing your Board of Adjustments. And those rules are really there for a reason. So if you've had, and I can tell you that we have it's probably the 3rd most permits that we issue at certain times of the year, probably only beaten out by swimming pools is cargo lifts. So if you take that number and compare it to the number that's been to the Board of Adjustments, there's probably not been any more swimming pools, cargo lifts than swimming pools.
But didn't you say it was the Board of Adjustments that asked for?
They asked the Board of Commissioners to look at it, and they basically said that we would take it on down here. But I'm telling you, there's really no need until we get this cleaned up in the NFIP ordinance, until we clean some of this up. Because right now you have to build a hardened structure, which is actually, it's a disadvantage for horizontal obstructions, for water debris. This is even has been encouraged by Randy Munt, who came here for our contractors informational meeting, who didn't even address it because he says we really should have the capability of breaking away our elevator shafts and cargo shafts, or not having the shafts in place to become horizontal structures. Building hardened structures, like I said, are economically unfeasible, and make it very hard on people trying to build them, but they also create the biggest horizontal obstruction during a flood event, especially in B zones. So that was my reasoning for holding back. We had hoped to get this kind of stuff before the board, but the board has been really busy. I mean, we had some really late nights. They've been really busy. So this is just a matter of us adding what's in our other ordinance as an exception into this rule. But at the meantime, I can give y'all a PowerPoint on what I just said, but I'm telling you the information I just gave you is exactly what the information is on cargo lifts. They wanted to look at allowing them in the front yard setbacks.
Front yard, rear yard. No, in the setbacks.
In the setbacks. And we have 5-foot setbacks on the side. Y'all know how close these houses are. You know, it's just, I just think it's a bad idea to start focusing on putting stuff inside setbacks when we don't have any more room than we have. When we've spent years getting stuff out of the side setbacks, HVAC equipment and that kind of stuff. And if you do look at any kind of exception, it would have to be in the front yard setback, because you can give an exception to the rear yard setback, but you can't give an exception to the CAMA stuff and some of the FEMA stuff that would come into play. So, you know, I just think that it's probably, here's what my recommendation would be to the planning board. Monitor it, keep up with it, monitor it, and let's see if it's going to be a problem from here on into the future. Of course, we're going to clean this up, but then if y'all want to put a number on it, if we have 2 more Board of Adjustments, you know what I mean, then we'll take a look at it again. But I would say if you don't have more than 1 a year, then it's no different than swimming pools or decks or anything else that people are trying to do that would be non-conforming. Yeah, I mean, that's just the way it is.
Don't we owe something back to the commissioning board
Well, I mean, we can, if y'all decide what I just said, then we can go back to them and tell them we're monitoring it to see if it's going to be a problem. Because I think some of the questions were, is it really a problem? That was some of the first questions I got. And some of the questions from the board. So, and I'm telling you, we haven't had a case since then. I mean, it's just not been anything.
Do you have numbers we can share with the board?
No, we can pull them off. We can pull those numbers. I can share them with them if you want me to. And if y'all decide to go this route, we can share with them what we already have. And you'll see. I don't even have to. I can tell you that there's been just as many swimming pools as there has been. I mean, are we going to start it? I mean, think about it. You're going to exempt the rules for swimming pools and side yard setbacks and front yard setbacks. Cargo lifts are typically the ones that we have had that have asked for rulings from the Board of Adjustments actually had places for them to go. They just didn't want to put them there. I mean, that's a fact too. I think every single one of them had locations they could put them. They just didn't want to put them there.
Like in the back, they could have put one in the back.
Well, just about every one of them can go where a deck's at.
Underneath.
So your recommendation is that we leave it as
That's what I
is, and then, like, we don't make any changes, which is what they were asking us to do. So you're saying, don't make any changes, we'll just continue to monitor it, and if there's any exceptions, they have to go to the Board of Adjustments, business as usual.
Well, I think what we need to do is just say that we're going to monitor it. And, I mean, can we put a number on it or anything? You want to do anything like that?
I like your idea. I mean, if it's way outside the normal, like for swimming pools or other things.
We can wait to do anything, I can bring you those numbers back. If you want the numbers, I'll bring the numbers back.
Well, I just, if you go to board of commissioners and they say, well, what are the numbers?
I'll
At
give
least
them.
have in your back pocket.
Yeah. Well, I had some idea, but I do know that we've not had more than 4 of these things go to the Board of Adjustment since I've been here. And we've had more swimming pools than that.
So there's only been 4 in
Yeah,
how many years?
they all happened like at
No.
one time.
I thought one of the other issues that they came with wasn't just because of that, but was because of the cost element. How much does it cost to assuming you don't hire a lawyer or anything, what's the cost of going to Board of
Oh, yeah,
Adjustments?
that was part
With
of
an
it.
exception.
Well, it would be the same for all of them. It's like
Which is-
$130, I
I think
think.
it's 175.
Yeah, it's 175, make application, yeah. And you're right, there was a cost. They were asking about the cost, but it's $175.
But you're talking about something that minimum, cheapest one of those things is $3 or $4 grand, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty expensive.
So,
And they
yeah.
have, we don't have to worry about the installs and that kind of stuff because the state, on top of the inspections I have to do, require pretty stringent contractors to write out a letter and basically notarize it saying that they've met at least 2 or 3 standards that we can't confirm. You know what I mean? That they have to confirm. So they're basically taking all responsibility. So they're pretty much, most of them are right. But I'm going to tell you something else. Every single one of those things that ends up outside a deck is dangerous. Every one of them that ends up where a deck was already out, going through a deck, is not dangerous because they're surrounded by rails and other stuff. But when you get them outside the deck, if you ain't got a good cargo lift company and it's one of those cargo lifts, then the safeties, they aren't required to be as stringent on those as they are on an elevator, and people still ride them, and kids still play with them. So when they go up through a deck, they're typically 99% safer than they are when they go on the outside. Now, we can't make them go up to the decks, but there's a lot of them that don't want to cut their decks. You know what I mean? Where it just comes right up to the deck. They want to go on the outside because they lose deck space, clearly. So that's the difference between wanting to change the rules so they don't have to, lose deck space and take side yard setback space, which we've been trying to clear up since, I'm assuming that ordinance started like 1985.
Well, I have one and it goes up through the deck.
Yeah.
Well, and my neighbor across the street, they wanted over on the side of the house, you turned them down. They came over to me and said, what can we do? I said, go put it through the deck.
Yeah.
That's what they did.
Yeah. But they get turned down because they, really everybody builds right to the setbacks.
Yeah.
Because the lots are so small. So that only leaves one place. It's up to a deck in the front or the back. And depending on where it's at, that sometimes they can't get them on oceanfront, they can't get them on the back. If you'll leave, you'll see them in the front. Yeah, and if they can't, it's a hardship, then they go to the Board of Adjustments. You don't change the rule.
Right.
That's just the whole point of it being there. It's not a precedent whenever they rule and it's a hardship. It's just not. So, but if y'all, ever how y'all want me to do it, if you just make a decision, then I'll handle it from there, and we'll take it from that point. But that's where I left it.
When you're referring to clear this up, what is it that you're gesturing to?
Okay, if you look at the NFIP ordinance,
Okay.
when you look in the elevator section, it's talking about the elevators as having to be, they have to be a hardened structure. In other words, now they got to have a hard foundation. They got to have drains in the bottom of them. They have to be concrete reinforced with reinforced steel. They have to be up to the, well, they're a hardened structure compared to a breakaway wall, which is what we had before, which is much better.
But can you
Because
change-
there's no hardened structure on the planet that's going to take a 3-foot wave. And when you knock it over and it starts running into your piles, there's a reason why we cut slabs into 4-foot sections or 10-foot sections so that that large hardened structure don't hit your piles. Because when water backs up behind it, you know what I mean? It'll go around a pile, but if you put a horizontal obstruction in front of it, whether it be concrete or wood, it's going to start doing some real damage. And once we lose one house, that house becomes horizontal obstructions for everything else. So it's really, it's a, you know what I mean? It was the ordinance that the attorney said we needed to get. It was written specifically for us out of the North Carolina Department of Public Safety was handling it. We reviewed it, and the only thing we missed was the elevators requiring that hardened shaft. And the reason we missed it, and I'll go ahead and tell you, the reason we missed it was because our other ordinance only referenced the technical bulletins, which allowed also for the others. So we just assumed that this one read the same way. Because what happened was this ordinance ended up with a lot of the technical bulletin stuff in it that was just referenced in ours.
Okay.
Do you understand?
So you gotta go back to them and get them to change.
No, I got to go back to the Board of Commissioners, and because it's a regulatory thing, I just have to go back to them and ask them to let's add an exception into that section. It will not change any score. It won't change it doesn't make our ordinance any less. The only thing that didn't happen was because it doesn't reference the technical bulletin. You don't have both options. You only have one.
Gotcha.
And when do you plan on doing that?
As soon as I can get it on the agenda.
What's the code number of that? Does that belong to us?
The NFIP?
Yeah.
No,
So that's our
it's regulatory. It's not in the land use. Is it in the land use? I
No,
don't
but
think it is.
it's in our ordinance.
Yeah, it's in the ordinances.
I'm asking
There it is.
if we've got to do a consistency statement. That's why I'm asking.
It's in 154. It's not in the land use. Yeah, that's why I was saying it's regulatory. So there's really nothing there to see, and we're not going to be taking away anything. We're just going to be adding that other portion of the technical bulletin, which is we could probably do it without it being in there because it does reference the technical bulletins.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't feel comfortable the way it's written. And we have to be careful because, and this might be a little too much information, but this ordinance now gets tied. When we write this ordinance, it then gets tied to the building code for our area through a statute that I have to rearrange with our stuff. And that's done through the state level at the building code section. Our codes are adopted at the state level, but I have a section that I have to fill in specifically for us. And when I put our NFIP ordinance in there, then our ordinance becomes part of the building code.
Okay.
So,
other than this, I think with his description, our discussion the last time we discussed this topic, I think we have too many lingering issues in the town today. I think we need to just put this to bed and say, we've reviewed it. We do not see a disproportionate amount of exception requirements, and to contrary, to open the can of worms to this thing becoming a bigger nuisance to the town. I think that if we were to try to modify, and I don't know how we'd go about doing it anyway, because it sounds like we'd have to modify exceptions to setbacks. And I just don't think that there have been enough cases or exceptions of this to warrant that kind of remedy.
So I totally agree with that, but I'd like to have the numbers to say there's only been 4 or 5. I'd like to make sure we have the numbers.
Well, I thought they came to us and said that they'd handled, the current Board of Adjustments had handled 3.
Well, whatever it is, I'd just like to have that in the thing that we say, there's only been 4, we don't think it's an issue. But we'll have that number, I think.
I can put it, if y'all want me to, I can put a statement together, and y'all can vote on it at the next planning board. Because the issue's not gonna become worse. You know what I mean? So we could just do it, I'll put a statement together, y'all can vote on if that's what you want to do, and I'll have the numbers in.
Perfect.
Yeah, we'll do it that way. Okay?
So does everybody agree with that?
I agree.
Okay.
When is the next meeting, by the way?
That's on our agenda to talk about.
Okay.
We gotta schedule it. Okay, water tower, number 6. Okay, so everyone should have gotten the information that was sent in the packet with the preliminary engineering report from Right Angle Engineering, as well as the local water supply plan from Chris. I just looked that up online because it's referenced as something that we have to do every year. And then I assume you guys have all read all, and you all received the tasker as well.
I think there's enough evidence that there's a clear and legitimate need. And presuming we can proceed by this, I think it's just a matter of where's the best location for it. And I guess the cheapest alternative I'm just a little concerned about how the proximity to existing houses and lots. I mean, I know we, excuse me?
Go ahead.
Well, I haven't, are these plots next to them, are they all privately owned?
Well, the one on Seagull, those are privately owned and currently have a house being built on them or permitted, where that one's at.
I mean, this one over here.
Yeah, that one, first
that
one
one.
caught my eye. The other one there, I don't know, that would be awful hard, because if that's the area, I just glanced at it, but if that's one of those areas that I think it is, it's gonna be awful hard to put a water tower there unless you got a lot of land that I don't see there. Because, and that's another thing too, it's right where a conservation district's at.
Okay, so I think that we need to back up a step because I'm not seeing a clear need. I would have a lot of questions when I went through this. I'm wondering if there's any alternatives to a water. So if you look through this thing on page 2, it seems to me that we have enough water for everything except for fire flow capacity, right? So if fire flow capacity is the issue, and it's only way, way down, they said we had enough at, they checked it at one place at 13 something was okay, but then even further down was no good. At 1365 was where there was an issue, right? So that's way down at the other end. So my first question is, and I don't know enough about this, maybe we need to have the people who wrote this report come and talk to us before we move forward, but is there any other alternatives besides a water tower to increase that flow? Can you have some kind of alternate pump halfway down the island or something that would accomplish that? Because it's really just, we have enough water for the people, we just don't have enough water for the fire.
Well, you gotta take in consideration future construction. There are gonna be more houses built.
Yeah, I know, they do that, and I have a lot of questions on where those numbers are coming from, especially since we look at what our land use numbers are, and I'm not matching those up to see how those, make sense to me. The two numbers aren't making sense to me when you look at the land use.
The reason you have a water tower, you pump the water up and that gives you pressure.
Right. So I'm wondering if we have some kind of secondary pressure pump
But you're
halfway
gonna
down
be
the
counting on
island.
this water tower for the pump down there. Where are you gonna get the water, except from this water tower?
So they have enough water, what they don't have is the pressure.
But you gotta worry about fire.
No, that's what I'm talking about, for the fire. We have enough water for the people, for
Okay.
everything. What we don't have enough water is the pressure for the fire. And then there's other alternate, I'm looking at how did he come up with these numbers of how much we need, and I did a little bit of research, and, these are for houses, if you look at page 3, where the Tri-Beach Fire Chief says you need 270,000 gallons, that's based off of houses that are 6,200 to 7,700 square feet. If you have a house that's only 5,000 square feet, you need 60,000 gallons. So there's a huge discrepancy. And there might be other alternate ways that you can do that, because if you have those large houses required to have sprinkler systems, you cut what they need in half
So
again.
you're not even considering this engineering firm's
Well, there's another
considerations of what we paid them
phenomenon
to
there too,
do.
but the only fire that was close to us, there were 3 houses on fire simultaneously. And so you have to add, you just don't take a single house with wind.
And
You're
that
more
was
than likely gonna get 3 or
that
4
was 2 doors
houses
down from me.
going at once.
So where was that?
Right
On
on.
Starfish.
Yeah.
Well,
That's December the 6th
that's a real life scenario, but I mean, if you start adding scenarios, you can fix it where 100 water towers won't work. But
No,
that's a real life
understand.
scenario.
I understand
Yeah,
that.
that
Yes,
wasn't
I mean,
that
if
wasn't
you look
used
at
to
the
doing
report,
this.
This is like they're taking
That wasn't
averages and
used.
average capacity and this, that, and the other thing. So you can't use one
Yes.
house or one.
But
The
I-
fire
but I
department
think-
was on Starfish, and we lost 3 houses.
But I think that the report shows that there is a drop in the GPM between 875 and the 1300 block. It shows that indicates that there's 2,251 GPM fire flow available at 878
Right.
and 1,000 at 1365.
Exactly.
So there's a loss there of the capability of producing the gallons per minute. Now, the phone call I made today, I haven't gotten back, but I asked if there was a report that verified that I assume that they'll get it to me or find what was used. But I asked the fire department if there was a report from their ISO report was available, or if there was a report from the Department of Insurance on whether or not that is an acceptable level or an unacceptable level. And I'm waiting on that because, we had short notice between that. So we had holiday, so I didn't have time to make the contacts. But the proof could actually be in that pudding. The proof could very well be that ISO is sitting on the document that clearly shows that what's written in that paragraph on page 3, is an indication that a water tower is needed. But I don't have that documentation, and I don't think it's in here. But we know that Doug Todd provided the numbers to Shane.
So then there was no documentation of what he provided, or do we know, did he just
Well,
verbally?
Shane may have it. I haven't had a chance to call Shane, but I wanted to go to the North Carolina Department of Insurance, who would have come down and done the testing with them. And I talked to David Ward, and he told me that Doug had it, but Doug's on vacation today. So I was interested in seeing the report. Now, I've also got to call in to North Carolina Department of Insurance because that's a public record. It's a public record. If you call, you should be able to get it. And it should be available. My contact retired. I'm getting old enough now. All the people I know are starting to retire. So I'm having to wait on somebody I don't know to call me back. But that's one thing. The other thing that's in here there's another thing I need to say. If we think this is a need, or if y'all decide this is a need, or decide this is not a need, we need to kind of work at this hard because the board's going to need this information probably before their first budget workshop so that they can use it to make a decision. And that's like in end of January, February, or somewhere along in there. So, we kind of need to know that. I'm not trying to pressure anybody to make a decision. If you don't get to it, you don't get to it. But you need to keep that in your mind that we need to work hard on this so that if it is something that we need to, put in a capital improvement plan in the future or something like that, they'll have the information.
Well, it is in the capital improvement plan.
I know,
but it's several years out.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Right.
saying.
But-
I don't think we need to decide today because,
No, I'm not saying today.
Yeah.
I'm saying that you got several months, but just look at it.
Did you guys?
The other thing, and when they came and made a presentation on this 2 board commissioners meetings ago, the thing that caught my eye was if you look at the top of page 3 where they talk about, the guy mentioned in the summertime,
Yeah.
you got half what the required usage is.
Well,
And if we lost a water pipe going across the intercoastal waterway, we wouldn't have enough water, we had to shut the island down.
Well, we got 2 pipes.
Okay.
the 3,000 water customers, I know that's a number that's real, but we only have 2,465 structures. So I don't know what the 3,000, if the 3,000.
Maybe it's the irrigation.
Irrigation.
It's irrigation. That's-
Irrigation meters are typically not going to be running during a fire, what I mean?
yeah.
How about
So-
pools? Do you have a separate one for a pool?
Well, pools they don't get calculated, they get filled up and that's,
Okay.
that's,
I didn't know if you had a separate meter for the pool.
yeah, well, some people do have a separate meter for the pools,
Yeah.
but it's a trickle, it's not yeah.
Yeah, so I think the 3,000 is overstated. I think the 2 hours at 270,000 gallons is way overstated. I just think, and if you look at the critical needs, number 1, it says, we already are meeting the NCDEQ requirements to provide half the average daily flow. And that's with or without, fires. We're meeting that. And then the way they said up here, based on the fire marshal's recommendation, he would like to have 2250. Like, you know what? $2 million, I'm not going to spend for a like to have.
Well, that's why I asked for the report.
Yeah,
Does the report show
I think
that
we need more information.
does the report show that we're deficient, or does the report show that we can improve?
Yes.
That
I'd like to see that data. That would be,
Yeah. So,
Did you guys?
I
have
guess though, I'm a
anything?
little bit concerned about referring to averages when we have such disparity in usage between July and January. I think we really are obligated, I think, to consider the peak and not the average in terms of And I would think for even general insurance purpose and everything else, that seemed to have,
Well, I just want to say, all of this assumes that all the water comes from the tank, where in reality, a lot of it comes from the pipe. You know what I'm saying?
well, it all comes from the tank, doesn't it? It's
Yes.
just,
No.
That's where you get the
No,
pressure.
no, we've got it down at the 800 block. There's
Yeah,
another.
there's a water line down there.
Yes.
Right.
From across the waterway.
Which
But they
means
don't
that
use
there's
it in
a,
summer.
Well,
Right.
that's what he's saying, it's not coming from the
I-
tank. When we're at peak, it's not coming from the tank, it's coming from across the waterway, right?
We have 2 water lines across there.
it's actually at the, I think the thing is at the end of Seagull.
Yeah, it
Is that
is.
right?
Yeah.
And so there's a tank on the other end of that somewhere. You know what I mean? That, and there's a tank before you get to our tank. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way you're gonna get pressure on level ground.
Right,
So that's what I'm
You get
asking.
pressure from gravity,
right.
But can
and we're
you-
on level ground, so you're not gonna get water pressure from the lake if you don't have a water tower to pump it up into and then pump it out.
Her question is though, is can an auxiliary pump compensate for that?
Yeah, that's what I'm
Talking
asking.
about a
As
boost
an
plate?
alternate,
But you're not
You're talking-
taking into consideration the
here-
amount of gallons you need.
There's not a pump on the planet that'll pump. They're using a booster pump to lift it. There's not a pump on the planet that can pump against atmosphere. I do know a little something about hydronics. That'll pump against atmospheric pressure, the outer space. You take a garden hose, you turn it and you pump it straight up. It'll only keep its column under the best hose for 30 feet. 29.9 is usually somewhere around barometric pressure. But you're talking about the whole universe pushing on you. So what happens is you have to have a booster pump to lift it farther. So even if you add a booster pump, if you lift it 10 feet down there, you're going to lose the 10 feet. So if you're pumping it to down there, unless you're pumping it downhill, which is exactly what he's saying, your water's already above it, then you're not going to be able to maintain any pressure. You can boost the pressure, but that's only for short periods of time, and you're not going to be able to do it for more than basically up for more than 30 feet. But you're going to lose it in friction. So you start putting, I don't know how big that booster pump would be, but it'd be a monster to boost it like you're talking about. But the question is that what's happening on the other end of the 800 where that water's coming across, you know what I mean? And where's that tower at?
on the other side of the,
Yeah.
in the
So
coastal.
yeah, but how far over there?
Right.
You know what I mean? And
Well, I don't see it.
Yeah. Well, you can't. I mean, there's places. There's other places. Anyway, Ash has water. Believe it or not, there's places in Ash has water. Water towers in supply. Okay. What I'm saying is, you need that report. The
Yes.
problem we
Yes.
have is you're limited by the size of the line, the height of your tower, the amount of water in the tower. You know what I mean? And the length and all those connections that's in between. That's why you have
Well,
an
it's also
engineer
pipe
study.
friction.
Huh?
Pipe friction, that's the equation.
Yeah, every turn, every 90 degree, all that changes everything. And then the pipe size itself, you're limited to gallons per minute per pipe size itself. So there's a lot of questions. Question one is that, you know, can you get more than 1,000 GPMs through the pipe down there at 1363? And question two is that we're always talking about half the storage capacity, but I thought that I heard him say that this whole thing was based off of half the tank being half full. That's what I thought I heard him saying that night. My question was, what happens if you got to have half the capacity? So I'm assuming the reason he said that was because you can only use half of it, because the other half has to be for storage for fire protection. So he's only counting half, even though it's full. So maybe that's where I'm confused there. But yeah.
Well, I mean, it's clear to me that we need to have him come because we've all got a lot of questions about this and where he got his information.
And what I would do if I was y'all, I would just make a list of the questions,
Yes.
and then you can give him the list of the questions, and he can be prepared to answer them when he gets back.
And I just want to reiterate one other thing that I said was that if you have a sprinkler system in the house, they need 50% less fire flow. So maybe an alternate solution is when you have those larger houses, they have to be required to have a sprinkler system. I mean, we got houses down there that have 27 square feet, 16 bedroom houses. That's probably going to need a lot of, there's a formula, and he used the formula for something that's 6,000 to almost 8,000 for the flow that he needed, which was where he gets that 2250 in 2 hours. But if you have a 5,000 square foot house, you only need 60,000 instead of 270,000, based on the formula from the North Carolina Fire
Yeah.
Code, which is a huge difference. I mean, we're talking $2 million. Maybe we change it so that those huge houses have to have sprinklers, and then they don't need as much pressure.
So, do y'all want me to look in the possibility of, I think there was a rule, don't hold me to this, because I tried to run away from this stuff. But I believe that there was a rule that was written that says that it might be possible, if you're having water issues maybe, that you could do that. You could require that houses over a certain size, or
Even existing houses?
I think you can do it. I think there's something out there, legislative law that lets something like that be written. I'll have to find out what it is.
Even for existing
Existing?
houses?
Not for existing.
Yeah.
Not for existing.
I wouldn't think so.
No, it's not for existing, but you can, you could, I think you could probably add it to heavy retrofits, large retrofits and that kind of stuff. But, I think mostly it was because of the bigger house issues that it came about. And the large houses that were being built in Charlotte and Raleigh and places like that. And I think it was for fire flow. I think fire flow was the issue. You get on a dead end street, you used to have a bunch of houses on it. You know, I mean, instead of the locals having to foot the bill for a new water tower, then they can be required to large houses can be required to do that. So, but
It's
I,
just something to think about. I mean,
I'll bring
I just
that
wanna-
back.
I
I'll
just
get
wanna
that
explore
information.
all avenues before we
I'll-
go and spend $2 million that we don't have.
I'll get that information to you.
Well, and I think we need to do due diligence on this and find everything and then send it back to the commissioners with, here's what we have learned.
I
And
agree
they
with
make
that.
the call, but we need to do due diligence and make sure we've covered all this. And I know that I did a whole bunch of work, you know, I did the math for the needed fire flow, which is the C factor times zero factor times 1 plus X plus P, where C equals 18F times the square root of A. You go through and you figure all this stuff out. And that's only used for buildings that are greater than 5,000 feet or commercial. And it also then depends on the distance between the homes, but you're also supposed to only take you do a bunch of random spots in your system, and then you rank them, and you take the fifth one is where you calculate NFO. So, I don't know where they got that number, but.
So what is their number compared to what you got?
I got, if you calculated it, I got 1,500. It's for the needed fire flow for the needed fire flow. If that home is,
Versus what's their number?
well, his number was,
2,000.
yeah, 2,250. But that was assuming that it was frame construction, class 1. It's limited combustibility, which is residential usages. And it's habitational.
Do we need to get the fire chief to come
Yeah.
explain to us
I'm-
where you got
yeah.
his numbers
Oh,
from?
yeah.
I think so, yeah.
I'm not I just looked it up, and it's all online. It's pretty straightforward. There's a whole workbook on how you calculate it, and it walks you through it step by step. It's not, here it is, needed fire flow. Here it is. See this?
Mhm.
So, I mean, you can see how you calculate it. It's not, I mean, it's average flow, right?
It's
So,
not rocket science.
no, it took me to calculate it, took me a whole page, but that's it. But my other comments were that Chris's report says that all of our pressure's okay, so I was wondering, you know, when it was tested.
I noticed this report from Chris was dated 2017. Have we done a 2018 yet?
I don't know, this is the most recent one, and it's required.
This is, I think this is
so-
this is the most current one he has, but it was done, it's the most current one he's got.
The other thing to note about that, though, is that if you go to the last page, it talks about wastewater. And in this case, I kind of wonder if maybe wastewater isn't the number that would be most appropriate to use. Because in the case of, I kind of think what we're aiming for here is, I question whether when they did this report, they were looking at what happened when we had Matthew come through and we lost our water supply. And it makes me question, are we building a second tank for hurricane issues? And if that's the case, when we had this occur last time, we cut out the rentals and we cut out the irrigation. Remember, you couldn't water? Remember all that? Which would greatly reduce your demand, because you can look at the demand in July, it was 1.1 million gallons a day, but in July of our sewage discharge was only 0.475. So it's less than half. So in other words, what I get out of this is that we've got a lot of people that are watering or using their pool, or, if we had a crisis, we would ask people to not water. Even if half the people cheated, we still have quite a bit of water. So I just thought that was kind of needed to be explored a bit further. But I also wanted to say that the population figures are way off from the land use plan projections.
They didn't get those from me.
Yeah,
So I don't know where you got them from.
I don't know either. But the other point is the number of residences that are off. Our island has 3,483 total properties, and that includes lots that have that 10-foot strip. It also includes like the 25-foot lots. Mark, you're familiar with that. I think you've got like 3 of them, right? So you really don't have that many lots. You don't have the 3,483. As of 2017, based on Tim's numbers, there were 2,482 properties with dwellings. So then if you do a build out of 3,400, say, lots at 8 people per lot, which is what we use for the land use plan, peak night would be 27,000 people. So I just thought that the numbers are not matching up for me at all. I mean, when you look at all of these things, they're not syncing.
So you're saying the 3,483 properties, is that including lots?
That's all the lots,
So that would be
including
the
lots that
maximum we
are.
could ever have.
No, we can't have that many because some of those lots are unbuildable.
So how do you
Some
get
of
to
them-
this, to that 2036, we're gonna have almost 4,000?
That's off. He's not
So there's
right.
no way we could ever get to that
Correct.
level.
That's what I'm saying.
We just couldn't get there.
Right. We have that many lots, and part of those lots are unbuildable. Part of them are, like, my next door neighbor has a 10-foot strip.
We would have to triple the number of houses we build every year to reach his 2020 mark.
Yeah.
It's
2020, I mean, look at 2036. That can't
Yeah,
even
and
be reached, is
and a
what you're
good
saying.
portion of ours are tear downs and rebuilds. But we would have to.
Yeah.
But well, see, I was wondering where he was getting the customer number from the lot number. But when I look at page 4, and I kept seeing it, but I didn't put it together. You look at page 4, you got to assume that he's talking about used structures, because you can't get that number. You know what I mean? If you're counting those as people already here now,
right.
you can't get to that number. It's got to be a structured use, is what he's using there.
How did they hire this engineering firm? RFP?
I don't know.
No,
I
it's
didn't
one
know.
they've been using for a long time, I believe. I don't think,
Well, the point is, though, is that Right Angle they do our roads, they do
Yeah.
everything. They're our staff engineer. They just do.
well, that was the second thing, was we might need a second opinion.
Right, and I would, one of my recommendations to the board would be, before you do this, make sure that I'd hire a firm that does this. Now, I do know Chris has, like the people who do the pipe testing, that's a firm that does a lot of water engineering, so we have those people. I don't know. And then I also had questions about the siting issues. Was sea level rise considered?
No, it wasn't. I mean,
Well,
if it was,
I
it
know.
doesn't show up on that map.
I read through there, and I don't think that was
The
considered,
reason,
but it's.
the reason the water tower is where it's at is where the water tower is at is actually almost
The height.
above the original. It was outside the BFE. It's tall enough that it's actually outside the BFE. This building was only required at that time to be built 2 feet off the ground. That's how high it is. So that's one of the highest places on the island. That's why it's built where it's at.
So if you
So
build a.
that's what I was saying about, you're in a conservation district on this island. You're in the marsh. I don't know how you're going to develop a foundation or get approval
Okay.
from any kind of environmental agency to put a where that one is down there, where we, that second location.
There
I
was
said.
2 in the marsh that there were
Yeah, they're not that- it's not
non-conventional,
that- And the one on Seagulls
Yeah,
on
but
private
what-
property with houses being built on it.
I'm just curious, if you build another water tower, it wouldn't have all the stuff around it that this one does, would it?
I don't know. Water towers are kind of like a critical facility. They're gonna be encaged, they're gonna be protected.
Yeah, but I'm talking about as far, you got a lot of different small buildings, so it's like around this water.
I don't know how that happened, most of that happened before I got here. I don't.
So there's a water tower down the road.
All those little buildings are usually for communication. There is nothing in those little buildings that has anything to do with that water tower.
That's all
But
those
we-
antennas on top.
No, I've seen water towers where it's just literally just a standalone water tower, and there's nothing around it.
Yeah,
except
there'll
a
be,
fence.
there'll be a pump or something in the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we would want the option to put communication stuff on top, right?
Well, sure.
You know, recoup a
But if
little-
you had to put it closer to a residential district,
yes.
you
which
might
is
not
what they're
want to have all
looking at
that
in most
crap
of
on
them.
there.
Well, I think no matter what, it's gonna look kind of industrial.
There's nowhere on this island that isn't close to a residential district.
Right.
That place don't exist. Don't know where it would be. Unless you went out there on that one spot that they've got marked, which is out there in one of those spoil areas. But I've been to that site. And although it looks like it is an X zone and it is above and probably the most viable site.
The one that's called Heron Landing Lynn.
That's it. The one that's down over there off the spoil area.
So.
Which would be across, you would be looking at it, those houses, that's looking across that marsh would be looking directly at that
Water tower.
water tower.
No, I think Tracy was here to say it. I mean, I agree. I think we need to just submit our questions to Vicki and get the fire chief and Right Angle to come back next meeting and be prepared to answer those questions. We don't need to blindside them. We
Yes, I
need
agree.
to give them all the
I agree.
questions and let them answer.
Yeah, I would give them questions ahead of time so that they could be.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Just make
You'll
sure
get,
they
you'll get
address
better
it.
answers.
So is that what we decide our next steps are?
We gotta make a motion.
A motion that we submit our questions to Vicki, to submit to Right Angle, and we have them come back to go over it at the next
And the
meeting.
fire chief.
And the fire chief.
Second.
Okay, is there discussion?
They need to come in person if they were to provide written.
I think they should come in person so that we can ask secondary questions based on their answers, right?
I would want him to come because I think that
Okay.
we're gonna have questions. I mean, I've got a lot of questions I want to understand better before I, send it back, but also I would think we would want to understand better as taxpaying citizens.
This isn't gonna be funded out of taxes.
It would be funded out of the water fund.
Right, but that's not taxes.
Right, but you pay for that,
Huh?
and you pay for that in your water.
I know, but that's just technically, it's not taxes. What I'm
Right,
saying
it's
is
an
your water
enterprise
bill.
system,
It's-
right.
It's a,
So maybe your water bill triple or quadruple.
well, it already, they're already, we're paying off a huge debt to create the sewer and the water tower's probably paid for over the years, but.
Yeah, I think we are debt-free on our water system.
Yeah.
Yeah, it said that in the report.
Hey,
And
Tim,
there's still some cash sitting there.
that's all you're.
I don't know what that fund balance is.
Just out of curiosity, maybe we need to ask somebody, what's the life left on this water tower?
They've got some studies on our water lines, and they're actually studying them. They're taking them apart right now and testing them to try to have a good idea. And there's some of them that that they're talking about replacing, maybe replacing.
Well,
in the
I'm talking
future.
about the tower itself.
I've not heard anything about the tower.
I wonder if
The tower, I'm wondering if may even be owned. I don't know if we own it or if the county owns it.
I think we own it
We own
because
it.
we paid the maintenance on it,
I
right?
wonder
That's
if they
right,
have
we
a
do.
use-
We pay for the maintenance.
I
Yeah.
wonder if they have a useful life of, pick a number, 50 years or something, and
Well, I hope it's a long time because we just got through spending a bunch of money completely sandblasting and repainting it. So I hope it's going to be around for a long time. But she's right, we do the maintenance on it. And we do handle all the contracts for every antenna on it, so I'm assuming we own it. But I've not heard anybody say that the water tower is an issue or considered it to be an issue. But if you want, you can ask Shane that question when he gets here. I mean,
So in addition to all those questions, Tim, you're gonna go off and get answers to the questions that you've already asked to see if we're in compliance currently.
right. I want to
Which
get
is
a copy
critical
of
also.
somewhere there's got to be. I mean, if they're saying that we've got to have X amount of water, and that is a requirement, or because here's what you don't want. You don't want the citizens to have to pay more money for
Correct.
insurance, fire insurance, because we got a bad ISO rating because we can't get water pressure down there. That's the report you need to see. Now, if that don't exist, then you might want, then the question may be, then do we really need it? But if that exists, then there's really no question, because then it's costing everybody on the island money, because it hurts their rating, and it hurts everybody who has to pay insurance in that fire area. So that's why I asked for it. I actually know that much. And I know that if that ISO rating is saying that we don't have water pressure on the other end, it ain't just them that's paying higher rates. I mean, other people are too.
I will tell you, there's a lot of factors that go into that ISO rating, and I pulled a sheet on it in the corner.
Yeah, but typically, the one thing I can tell you for all the municipalities I work, the one that does it the most damage is bad water pressure. That really hurts. They won't. It's like a cap. You know what I mean on the rating. So.
That'd be a good question for Chief.
Because I guess you can't put a fire out if you ain't got water. So yeah, we can
Okay,
ask.
so we have a motion on the floor. Any more discussion?
Who's going to collect the questions? Do we have the logistics behind this?
I'll be
I
glad to. I think the
send them to
motion was to
Vicki.
send them to me.
By what time? Do we need to set a time frame here?
Good idea.
So do you want to send them to me and then I'll send them on to Shane, or do you want to?
Vicky's going to collect them and she'll forward them to you. Is
Okay.
what
I can do that.
suggest.
I'll send them on because I'm gonna contact Shane and Doug to get them here for the next meeting.
Okay.
So I'll send them on to them and they can pick out which ones they want to answer, which ones they don't work together. I can
Vicki,
send-
why don't you just set a deadline like a week from now, or something to get the.
Yeah, you shouldn't need too much time.
Will that work for everyone? A week from now, everybody can study up and make your questions.
Or we'll get it done. Hey, I Googled useful life of a water tower, and it said with minimal maintenance, 75 to 100 years.
You let Ronald should be retired.
Okay, any more discussion? Did we just vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay. So you'll all get the questions to me within a week. You've all got my email address. I will summarize them and give them to Tim. He will touch base with Shane and Chief Todd and bring them to our next meeting. And they can address all of our questions. Okay. Moving on to number 7, formation of Citizens Advisory Committee on Parking. Okay. Parking is, coming back up here. You should have all gotten a tasker. Did you get the revised tasker? There were 2. We got a revised one. That was in your packet, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And it's basically to address the case of the parking project with the support of a third party, investigate organizing Jordan Boulevard. And Pete, you originally brought that up months and months ago about that study that was done to organize Jordan Boulevard, and no one's been able to find that report. What a shame.
I talked to several people about that, and it was something done, it was free, it was gonna be free
Yes.
to the town. And they didn't want to do it, but I thought it was,
It was in my office.
I have to talk to,
I'm gonna tell them.
there's a couple of people who called.
We didn't look over there,
Were
though.
upset because they didn't do it.
Hey,
But they never did it. It was just.
They,
Oh, they did the
it
design.
was, yeah, and it was a
There's this
centerpiece
NCSU, right?
with parking down the center, because it's 150 feet of right of way.
I saw it right there.
200 foot right away. It's 200 feet.
And so they had a center thing, and the board was scared that it was,
when did you see it, Pete?
I never saw it, I just heard rumors about it.
It was a year ago, 5 years ago.
That was a long time.
Okay, well, what if I told you I have actually seen it? Okay, I have seen that document. I've had it in my hands.
Just can't find it now.
And well, hold on. Let me tell you, we carried I'm not promising anything, but we have a place where we archive stuff, and nobody likes to talk about it, I guess. But I got to think when somebody said, I thought, it was in a document, or I read it somewhere. What we're talking about, I've seen it somewhere, and it dawned on me that I've seen that. I also saw it with the bicycle plan, the full bicycle plan, and which means that there's a possibility that it's in a box somewhere and it's archived over there. And if we go over there, we may be able to find it. Or it's a possibility that because none of that stuff came to fruition, and we're not required to keep it, that it got thrown away. But I've had both of those documents in my hand. I remember the plan down there. I had it in my hand and was looking at it when I first got here, and they were putting the things in the median out there. I don't know how I got my hands on it, but I saw it. I had my hands on it. And I know who else was looking at it at the same time I was, which was Amanda. I remember that. I got a pretty good memory. I remember that. The problem is I don't remember where it went. Okay? Now, I know it's no longer in my office. And I think we've looked everywhere. And we can't find it.
Who created it? Like was it?
Well, something else is, let me check some other places. But let me look for it.
Okay.
And let's see if I can find it. But not many people have seen it, but I have actually seen that document. And it's actually on a big piece of paper too.
But if you can't
And
find
it's in color.
if you can't find it, how much would it cost to have it redone?
Well, if we can find out somehow who we paid, they probably have a copy of it still.
Exactly.
But it was approved. The plan was actually approved by DOT
Was the pavilion in place already during that?
because of the
I
intersection.
don't think so.
Yeah.
I think there was a deck there. I don't think there was a pavilion there.
The
It was just a
pavilion
deck.
was not on that plan.
Was it concepted to be in the plan? or was that
I
in-
don't know.
The part that I have was the median that they were going to put in, the way they had the road laid out, the way they had the parking laid out. It was pretty well laid out all down the, in front of your place and all down in there, and that's what you're talking about. But it was a right nice plan. It was not something that was just thrown together. It was done by an architectural firm or landscaping firm or somebody, of some significance. It had a seal on it too, and it was approved by the DOT. But I can tell you this, it was not in a book, so it wasn't a fold out. It was actually a plan, and it was in color. That's what I remember about it.
Okay, well, I'll finish reading the tasker here. They also want us to look at land that the town does not own, that could potentially be converted to parking if determined to be necessary. Develop a list of town-owned properties that can potentially provide additional visitor parking and the cost to develop that. And they want us to investigate paid parking.
Okay. It was, I don't know if I'm saying something here that'll get me put in jail, get me fired. But about year and a half, 2 years ago, I was given a top secret, super secret mission, say no more, we can't talk about it, to do a parking plan on a piece of property. And I know that they talked about it, but it was in, somewhere, and it didn't go any further. But there's, that particular individual was, I still have his contact information, but there was a piece of property that we had actually laid out and designed for parking.
Parking a piece of property that we currently
That was
own.
privately owned,
Privately
that
owned.
we could own. Is that what it says? Is look for that?
Yeah, it says
Yeah.
both, that's why I'm wondering which one it was.
And it was around the same time that we started the last one.
Okay.
So I was on a top secret mission while we were doing the other. But anyway, they went nowhere. And I don't know what happened to the plan because I did it. And then it was a concept and I don't know where it went. But
Okay.
Were they willing to sell the property?
well, he had talked to, I don't know what he's willing to do now. When we didn't get to that point where we needed to be, he called me back and wanted me to give him some permitting prices for large condos. But that was a year ago and I haven't heard from him since.
I don't know where that property is.
So
Over here.
Yeah, I mean, part of the problem is if we identify the ideal spot, I mean, you look at supply-demand figures, if I'm sitting on owning a piece of property and all of a sudden I know that I got a buyer out that wants it, it just seems like, it'd be nice if we had, if there were known properties for sale, which,
Well, yes, maybe, I mean, I would think that you would start with the property that we already own, right? what does the town already own?
And we did that last year.
And we already got all that.
So we're using all that? I mean, because that's one of the things on
That's one-
the, it specifically
I
says
think,
to do.
yeah, one of the things that when this committee, since I
Number
did the
two.
committee last year, I'm gonna step aside because a lot of this is redundant in my opinion, but anyway.
It came from, it's straight out of our report.
It's the final parts of your report. We did
Your report
portions
said
of
do
it.
this in 2019.
Yeah,
But it also says if determined to be necessary. So I mean, the CAC needs to determine is it necessary or not before, you go further. But anyway, the Citizen Advisory Committee's got to
be
do
formed.
that, and we have to appoint them. And Mark, you didn't want to serve again?
No, I think it needs fresh eyes. I suggest that they do at least have access to the report and all the addenda that are a part of that report, because there was a tremendous amount of work involved. So, but that's the key, is it, and just as a advice to whoever's going to chair this thing, these committees require a quorum of 4, so there'll be a 5-man committee, and it's difficult. And to coordinate, because you also have to coordinate with at least one representative from town staff at all meetings. And
Because
and
it's
then you
a
have to
meeting.
coordinate to get meetings so that it's convenient to go back to report on the 4th Tuesday to this committee, and it'll be time consuming. It'll probably run into,
And there's a
at least-
90-day time limit, so unless we ask for an extension.
Right.
The board gave you 90 days?
That's
When they're
standard for
set
these
up, they're
committees.
90 days. You have to report back in 90 days.
Okay.
So, who else would like the exciting opportunity to volunteer on this?
Well, I volunteered once, so I wouldn't mind being on it.
I'd like to be on there.
Okay.
She's looking for a chair first.
No, she's gonna chair it, I think.
We only have 2,
and we
so
have 2, and one of those 2
I don't
has to
want
be
to
a chair.
chair. I don't want to be a chair. Do you want to be the chair, Pete? Otherwise, I'll step aside and let Vicky do it.
I don't know that I have the time to be the chair.
Well, you got to be at the meetings.
Right. Yeah, I can
It
chair.
doesn't have to be, you could be the vice.
No, he has to be at the meetings. If you volunteer, you got to be at my meetings. If I got to be there, you gonna be there. Okay. It's just that simple.
do we want to agree by acclamation then? Pete and Tracy will do this?
Maybe one of them has to chair it, though. One of them
Yeah,
has
Pete
to.
said he would chair.
Who was our last members? Was it you and Vicky?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'll do it again, but I'll also let you guys.
Well, I don't know. I think it might be useful to have some continuity, so one person who was on it last time should probably be on it again, don't you think? I mean, what do you... Does that make sense, so that someone who has the history of what we went through already, so that you don't reinvent the wheel? So I'll step aside and let you do it.
These meetings are open, and the way I conducted the meeting is pretty open to the because it's meant to collect as much input, even though there's only the 5 people. And I suggest that, and it's actually convenient if you do have the time, if you're on this board, to sit in on those meetings, because it really helps shortcut some of the other issues too.
Oh, yeah. I went to
Coordination.
all the parking meetings. Almost all of them. Most of them. Some of them.
Okay,
I went all over. I went all over.
Nah, I did more than 1 or 2.
Me and Rhonda went all over.
so are you withdrawing then?
Yes.
But
Unless
you'll
you want
come
me to.
anyway, right?
Absolutely, I will come. I'll come to all the meetings. Or almost all, or some of them.
Some of them.
Now,
Most of
Or
them.
most of them.
just as a point of order, though, on the formation of these committees, we're limited to only 2, or could a member of this committee serve as an at-large?
I don't know. I've got the ordinance right here. Okay, how about if we go and we look at our members real quick, and we'll come back to this while Mark reads. Okay, in your
have it,
packet, you had,
You can't have it too.
pardon me?
It just says 3 members of the public. each of whom shall be residents or owners of residential property located in the town. I mean, we're all members of the public, are we not?
Let's move on right here to our other members that volunteered. Kim Benrich volunteered. She's a full-time resident at 112 by the Sea. Marty Atwood volunteered. Now, she does say that she works full-time and would not be able to participate if meetings were during the day.
Meetings are during the day because I think,
I know, because of staff. Okay, so,
So you're
and then
rejecting
Bob
her?
Bayless participated last time, and he's willing to serve again. So that's the 3 volunteers we had.
Marty Arrowwood doesn't sound like she's a candidate for that.
She's out.
She teaches, I think.
Well, I hate that we, eliminate people who work. I also appreciate the
I
staff's
mean,
time.
during the day, I mean, the last time we had a bus driver, we worked around, he worked, but we worked around the schedule. I mean, if she could make a 4 o'clock meeting, that would be still suitable, I think, to them. Just the after hours becomes an imposition on,
I hear you.
and you can't really run these subcommittees without representation from somebody from staff, because there are always issues that,
Okay, so then the way this process works is that you guys would need to nominate these people to serve.
well, I don't know, we don't have a lawyer president, but I don't think that it precludes a 3rd member from this board serving on this committee. It says 2 members have to be from this, and then 3 members of the public that own property on
Yeah, I agree with David.
Do you own property?
Who?
Pete?
No, on the island.
Yeah.
so he's not a member of the, he doesn't fit that definition, but he fits a member because he's on the committee, so that,
Yeah.
but she's a resident, so
Right.
she could serve as a member of the public, is my only point. She couldn't serve last time,
I was still,
because she was a sibling of a,
but they changed the rule.
see if you read that any differently, it just says,
Three members of the public, each of whom shall be residents or owners of residential property located in the town, and 2 regular or alternate members of the Planning and Zoning Board, all of whom shall be appointed by the Planning and Zoning Board by a vote taken at a meeting of the Planning and Zoning Board, and each shall serve at the pleasure of the BOC.
I think you have to just be careful. The
Well, you
percentage,
can't
it's
have-
Like you're stacking it with.
You can't have 3. Well, yes, no, you can't. You can't. Is 4 a quorum on the planning board?
yes.
Okay, so you
No,
can't
no,
have
no. No, 3. I think our quorum is only
3?
3.
So you can't have 3.
But the
Well,
committee,
you could, you just have to tell them that there's a quorum there.
no, the quorum of that committee is 4.
But
Yeah, I
he's saying
think-
if you
yeah,
had 3 of
I
us
think
on
it-
that committee, you'd always have a quorum of the planning board.
So I just think you
Oh.
got a
But
perception
which is-
issue. if
which
you-
is okay.
If you put 3 on there.
You don't want to just.
They're all public meetings. It isn't like,
Okay,
You should do it.
okay.
Okay,
Huh?
but we still are going to be short. We don't have enough.
Yeah.
time.
yeah, so it's a matter of waiting another,
Y'all have 6 voting members on the planning board?
No, we have 5
You have
voting.
5, okay. You got 5 voting members on the planning board. You put 3 of them on the committee. You have a majority of your planning board voting already on the committee.
Yeah.
That is not a good committee.
That's what I'm saying. I think there's nothing else. It's a perception issue if you're stacking
Yeah.
the committee.
Well, you might as well not have the committee,
Yeah,
because you might as well just use the planning board, because those 3 people are going to decide everything.
there you go.
No,
Okay.
I was just trying to expedite the formation because
We
if
don't
we
have
don't
enough
meet,
people.
subject to the next item, we may not meet again until January.
But you
The
got
90
plenty.
days will expire in this,
Well, I can't,
well, be
I can-
reappointed.
well, I can, listen,
What the, can't come during.
Can we,
so the committee,
Well, but you can approve her, you know,
Hold
at
on a
least in saying that she can do 4 o'clock.
you're making it too hard, and here's why. You can, if you can't, don't have enough to make a committee, you've got more than 90 days because you haven't formed the committee yet.
Correct.
The 90 days don't start till you form a
I'm just kidding
committee.
about that.
So you can actually put it back out there for more advertising, you know what I mean? And at the same time, if you wanted to get an opinion from the attorney, you could do that as well. But, you know, you either have it or you don't have it, kind of thing. But we don't have enough without, I mean, you may want to re-advertise.
Yeah, that or we just
I think
appoint
that
Marty, and if she can't make the meetings, she doesn't make the meetings as long as the other 4 are there.
Well, and then we talk to her and find out if,
4 o'clock work,
4
or
o'clock
if she
or
doesn't get
whatever.
done till 5 or 6, then that won't work. Or there's the week, oh no, you can't do weekend.
how about if we appoint Marty and I just give her a call?
And if you have to, and if she wants to, for practical reasons, withdraw,
Yeah.
I think it'd be better to get this committee started. Because we started the last time with you at the first meeting, and then we got a 5th guy to join. And the committee or all of us can go and try to drum up, hey, call your neighbor, you want to get on this committee. Boom. And we could do that at the next
It
meeting.
was Joe.
Was there anybody else that was on your committee who might be good to serve again?
There was somebody else.
I had Heather
Who's the
contact
missing,
him
who's the
One
missing
of-
person?
today.
Oh, it's him. No, who's the missing person?
Today?
No, we had, she couldn't do it. So we had Bob,
Yeah, Joe Butler.
Joe
Joe
Butler.
Butler, hold on.
And then we had the bus driver
The bus
guy.
driver guy.
I forget his
Yeah, the
name.
bus driver guy. Yeah.
And Heather was gonna contact him. And
She emailed both of them.
That's the bus driver guy. I didn't remember the bus.
And he didn't respond, or,
I hadn't heard.
he had a hard time, you know.
I know, that's
Well,
what
it's-
I didn't remember.
it did
Low
really
impact.
restrict.
Right.
It was, I mean, no fault of
Trying
him,
to
it
see.
just, if you think of a bus driver's schedule, and like this is
Yeah.
a good late afternoon, you know, I think we ended up with 1 o'clock that was
I had
being
his name. I
workable
can't remember what it is.
time for him when he was in. I would suggest, you talk to Marty, and we appoint her, but if she determines that she cannot effectively serve within those
Right.
hours, she could resign.
And then we'll
And
be
the committee could still function with the 4 if they had to. And then we could reach out and hopefully your next agenda item will decide when we might legally appoint, because I guess we would have to do that at this meeting to add that 5th person to replace.
Right.
Okay. So I move,
So do you make a motion to that effect?
I move that this committee be reformed with, who's gonna, Vicky is chairman.
No, Pete, you were the
Pete's
chairman.
chairman.
Pete's chairman, Vicky as the second.
No, Vicky whispered to me that she wants me to do it.
Okay, so then,
You say Vicky's got a lot of
Right.
her plate already.
So you'd be the secretary, Tracy.
Okay, I can do that.
okay, Tracy, and then the 3 at-large as candidates that were submitted.
That would be
You know
Kim
the-
Finrich, Marty Arrowwood, and Bob Bayless.
Be appointed as this committee.
I second it. That was his motion. I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Okay, that was quick. Okay, under comments, we need to schedule our next meeting. Because it's currently scheduled for Christmas Day and the next one is New Year's, so.
New Year's.
What? Well, we went a week later, sorry.
Oh,
Because, you know, like usually we could push back a week, but that wouldn't work either. So, what do you guys think about moving? Would you be up for December the 18th, going a week earlier?
Was this meeting gonna be a,
Regular planning and zoning, not land use plan.
The
Yeah,
next one
use
of
of
that is
January.
January, yeah, 22nd.
what topics, I guess the only reason that we'd be meeting is if we got responses soon enough
For our questions.
for this. I mean, and I guess if we don't, then you cancel the meeting, is what you're
Yeah, we could do that.
suggesting.
I mean, we would also need to, at that point, we would know if Marty was able to make a meeting or whatever.
Okay.
Well, you mean to put a new person in, because I'm hoping that the parking would start meeting right away if we
Right.
only have 90 days, okay?
You'll probably, I guarantee you're gonna ask for an extension of 90 days, which is done for
I'm gonna,
every subcommittee that's
Especially
ever
over
been
the
formed
holidays.
is ever done, so it's not, the 90 days isn't like a firm, well, no, I don't think any committee's ever met the 90 days.
Okay, so back to our meeting date, our next meeting date. Do we want to do the 18th tentatively, and then we would cancel if we had?
Kind of remember
Tim,
sometime.
Are you
is
talking
that
about
your-
P and Z or?
Yeah, we're good, we're
Yes,
good.
I'm talking about.
Are you good for the
Oh,
18th?
what, Tracy, what did you say about the 22nd?
That's when our next land use meeting is in January.
In January, thank you, I thought you meant December. I was like,
No,
I
he
wanna
was
see
asking
that.
about that.
All right, we got Board of Commissioners that night, that might as well.
That's the 18th.
Yes, would that work?
Good with me. Rhonda says, mm-hmm. What you said.
I'm not sure I'll be back, but,
Does anybody else have a suggestion?
no, I mean, that's fine, I mean.
Okay,
Yeah, there's no other date. That's
I'm
it.
okay with that.
That's
There's a
all
good
you
chance
got.
We're not, you know, other than, and if you're only gonna be meet, they'll appoint, a fifth member of, I think three representatives sitting here would be sufficient. I would trust each of your judgment in appointing.
So Tim, can we have that proposal with the numbers on the 18th? Where you, for the cargo, where you're gonna,
Yeah,
something
yeah.
that we can vote on?
Yeah, it doesn't take me, I can pick that out in just a,
Okay, so
Okay.
I'll
Okay,
just-
that's right, they got that item too.
Yeah,
yeah, that's not a problem.
okay, so we can plan on
Yeah.
voting on that.
cargo, possibly the water tower, and possibly another parking person. Okay, so,
You gonna contact Marty?
I can.
Okay, because we can put
He-
something up. We get a lot of people that come in and out of our office over there. We can put something on the front window if you'll let me know if Marty, how
Okay.
that works out. And we'll put something up there maybe for another application. So, just
So
if
you're
you
looking for a final.
yeah, because we have there's a lot of contractors on the island that actually live here. I mean, they live on the island. I can think of three right off the top of my head. You know what I mean? That may want to serve on some of those boards. They just don't know when they are. You know what I mean? So, but there's also a lot of property owners. We help a lot of property owners every day over there. You know, we get as many property owners through our office as we do contractors. Want free advice. So,
Okay, I'll let you know.
okay.
Okay, so then, do we have a motion to make our next meeting on the 18th?
Sure, I motion to make it on the 18th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Our next meeting will be December the 18th at 4:00 p.m. The other thing I had under comments is, Tim, you sent me the data, the actual data from the land use plan,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought it was fabulous. So I was wondering if you could send it to the rest of the land use plan group, the steering committee?
I didn't send you nothing. I didn't send everybody.
We didn't get, are you talking about the one with the comments?
Yes, is the Excel version?
No, I didn't. I only sent that to you.
Okay, can we all see it?
Yeah, why don't you share it with everybody?
I can do that.
Can you do that? But I have it all. I have all of you in one group. If y'all want me to resend it, that's why I can't believe it. I don't know why. Maybe I just forwarded it from my phone or something.
Could been.
Yeah, 'cause, yeah. That. Yeah, 'cause I
So
put
do you
y'all.
wanna send
I put
it?
y'all in a group, so I couldn't just send it to one person. What?
Do you want to send it, or do you want me to send it?
I'll send it. That way it goes out in the group, and then I'll have it as a record. Because I also have y'all in an email group and
Okay.
on the side and all that stuff that way.
Okay, I thought it was fascinating, and I
Yeah, there wasn't nothing in there. There was no mind-blowing stuff in there.
I like the comments. I like seeing people.
Some of them were pretty good, yeah. Some of
Some
them
of
were,
them are weird, but
yeah, one of them was well-based. One,
Now, the 18th is right angle gonna be here?
I'm gonna call them. I'll give them a call tomorrow and we'll know. I'll send y'all an email, let you know.
Okay, and so if everybody gets me their questions by the 4th, I can turn it around immediately and get that sent to you so you can ask him.
Yeah, but I'm
But
just
you go
gonna,
ahead and
I'm
touch
gonna go ahead and
base
tell him he's coming on the 18th and we'll have questions for him available before he gets here. And I'll get up with Doug too. And if Doug can't come, I'm sure he'll send David. He's got
Okay,
a captain over there that's pretty articulate. Yeah.
I just don't see you have confidence in that company now.
A little late, isn't it?
Yeah, I just wonder how they got chosen. Right.
okay, that's all that's on our agenda, unless anybody else has any comments they need to share. Okay, motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay.
That's good.
You gonna take a vote?
Actually, I don't know if you have to vote on an adjournment, but all those in favor of adjourning?
Nice.
Let's stay in
We are
talk.
adjourned.